Hi, I'm Gloria, and I'm back for weeks 3 and 4 of applying a growth mindset to Valorant. I'm combining weeks 3 and 4 because it felt really unproductive to be editing and thinking about different learnings and concepts from an earlier week while focusing on my current week. It wasn't exactly the best for my focus, so yeah, hopefully this way I don't overload my brain every week. After the rank reset, I finally climbed from Silver 3 to Gold 3, which I'm very happy about. My rank sucks so much, and I feel very motivated to get out of here. So I wanted to start off with this clip because remember how I talked about this position on elbow on Pearl last week? This is a success clip of this angle. It was so freaking satisfying when this happened. I had a plan for post plant and I stuck with it and it worked. This ISO wasn't even looking at me when he swung elbow. I also want to show you this clip because I thought it was really funny, and yeah, this just describes my mental for the week. Oh.
Yo, Jet, are you serious? That was kind of crazy.
Okay, so jumping into the week now, I began week 3 with pretty bad mental, and I think it had to do with like my hormones and drinking alcohol over the weekend and getting inconsistent sleep, and also taking a 2-day break from Valorant and aim training over the weekend. So yeah, a lot going on. I found it pretty hard to focus on aim training, like my mind was wandering all over the place, but I remember having this thought like, hey, it's Monday. Don't judge yourself on a Monday. As soon as I had that thought and did my next aim training exercise, I'm not even kidding, I just got a new high score. After reading a few pages of The Inner Game of Tennis, I started to notice that I tended to reward myself whenever I succeeded in clicking a dot, but that also meant that whenever I missed a dot, I'd have a microsecond of a feeling like I just made a mistake, which would eventually build more and more as I made more mistakes. Then I would start thinking, why did I miss the dot? Is my wrist too tense? What am I doing wrong? Which overall just wasn't good for my mental. I learned this next method from Tam, which is to basically repeat to myself, smooth lines, smooth lines, smooth lines, smooth lines, smooth lines, as I aim train. By doing so, I wouldn't have the capacity to think much about how I keep missing the dots or about how slow I am, and in effect, my mental would just be a lot better. During week 3, it kind of felt like my movement was struggling during gunfights. I would often freeze and stop moving whenever I saw an enemy, so I decided to practice using a phantom while focusing on my movement, and honestly, it felt like I was just owning people. But for some reason, this would not translate to in-game, and I didn't move like I moved in a deathmatch. Towards the end of week 3, I tried using the ghost during my deathmatches after watching Worthy's Ghost Deathmatch YouTube video. My primary focus here was my movement. Not gonna lie, I was so frustrated that I couldn't kill people and that my score was low, that I would just end up spam shooting people's body after the first headshot, or I just end up changing guns. I didn't think this was great practice for me when my mental was already low this week, so instead I did a regular deathmatch and decided to VOD review the deathmatch. Shout out to Zasko because I got this idea from him. Here I learned and was reminded of some really important things. Number 1, I often froze up and died when I was exposed to multiple angles. I think my brain often gets overwhelmed when I don't know where to focus my attention, so I die a lot in these situations. Number 2, I won fights more easily when I had larger movements. Number 3, my crosshair placement was ass on maps I was less familiar with. Number 4, I wasn't able to shoot a moving enemy if I wasn't expecting them to be there. I had this aha moment when I got to number 4 because I felt like I figured a core issue out. Jumping into week 4, I kind of hyper-focused on learning number 4 because this is what frustrated me the most when I played an actual comp game. This is a pretty large issue with multiple ways to approach it, and I'm honestly already doing things to help me like improve my game sense and tackle this problem, but I still wanted to go a little deeper, so I consulted Tam and came up with 2 other hypotheses. Number 1 is that when I panic, I just tense up, and my wrist tenses up, my arm tenses up, and it literally just interferes with my micro adjustments. Number 2 is that shooting moving targets in between strafing is actually just hard for me. As a response to reason number 1, I decided to dedicate my aim training sessions and my deathmatch sessions to being mindful of the tension in my arm, my forearm, and my wrist. Tam told me for low sense, I should use my arm when tracking angles and pre-aiming, and then my wrist should be perfectly relaxed to flick and micro-adjust. So I practiced doing this, and dang, it just made me more aware of how tense my wrist actually was when I aimed. For reason number 2, Tam actually recommended this Wuhujin dead zoning exercise that I did a while ago, and to master this concept before moving on. Not gonna lie, I thought this would be pretty easy for me by now, but I was actually struggling with it in the beginning. So I thought this was also a really good place for me to start. Moving on to a VOD review of my Clove on Split. I MVP'd a game on Split and I feel like I was trying so hard to win by making calls that when we lost, I felt so bad and I feel like it was all my fault. It was cringing at the calls I made and I didn't even want to VOD review the game so I didn't have to experience again. But because I had this feeling, I thought it was actually the perfect game to VOD review. So yeah, like what could I have done to actually have won us that game? So here are my takeaways. Takeaway number 1 is don't assume your Jett will clear close corners at this rank. You'll start to see some patterns here if you watched the last video. As Jett, I always freaking clear this, so I didn't even think twice about it. Also, why the heck am I shooting a dead Killjoy's turret? This pains me so much to watch. Number 2, check the minimap before I W key into sight by myself. I notice I have this habit of taking space at my own pace without even realizing where my team is on the map. Like look at me, I literally pushed the Omen smoke by myself. Look at where my teammates are. I'm completely separated from them. The worst part about this is that we were on our anti-eco round, so I could have easily given the enemies a gun. It's funny you can see that I realized that I'm actually throwing here by pushing CT by myself, so I started to run back so my teammates could trade me. But looking at the VOD now, my teammates wouldn't even have been able to trade me, so just everything here was a mistake. Yeah, I realize I'm getting rewarded for a lot of mistakes at this rank, but at least I'm VOD reviewing so I can notice it and call it out. Number 3, at first I actually wrote down that I needed to wait for the clove orb to land before I peeked the enemy, but I realized my gun wasn't even out when I swung, and it made me realize like how rushed I actually felt in this situation. This is hard since it's a clutch situation, but there's also a learning here where I can pause for even like 3 seconds to reassess the situation instead of instinctually rushing to make a play. The Omen wasn't even able to trade this Reyna, so I could have won the round if I played it a little differently. Number 4, practice retake pathing for A site. You can see how messy my clearing is here, and I'm just not confident in my pathing. I died here because I wasn't comfortable retaking from ramp to site. I just had no idea where my crosshair should have been, and I felt panicked because it felt like I was exposed to multiple angles, so I just didn't feel safe. I think I had a full 2 seconds here before the Sage decided to shoot a bullet at me. I could have easily killed her if I had better crosshair placement and I was expecting like where the enemy could be. During week 4, I also got a new mouse pad. I like it a lot so far. I'm not sure how to explain it, but the friction against my mouse gates feels really nice. The only downside to this mouse pad is that my skin tends to sweat a little bit more on it, but we'll see. We'll feel it out. I didn't really mention it in the past few weeks, but I wasn't really meditating even though I thought it was a really important habit for myself. I gave it some thought and was wondering like what is blocking me here, and I think ultimately I didn't see the value of meditating for 5 minutes. So I decided to increase it to 10 minutes and try a different type of meditation, which is called Yoga Nidra. I tried to meditate after my second game for 2 days, and bro, my mind was like so chaotic in the beginning and it ended so calmly by the end of the session. Like it felt like it really helped me reset my mental going into my 3rd comp game. So I would definitely recommend this to myself moving forward, and I have to keep myself accountable. Okay, I'm gonna end with a quick recap on what went well, what didn't, and how I can improve for next week. What went well, I learned about little ways to improve my mental. I identified a core issue and have experiments to tackle that issue. I switched to Yoga Nidra for 10 minutes a day, and I also got to go 3. What didn't go well, I spread myself out too thin by focusing on too many different things throughout the weeks. I also spent a lot of time deathmatching unproductively without sticking to a clear intention. And how can I improve for next week? I'm gonna focus on one map to VOD review and practice for, just better focus. And to address my issue of spreading myself out too thinly, I'm gonna create a list of my problems and then experiments and rate them based on priority order. Okay, and that's it for these weeks. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good week. Bye bye. Wait, while editing, I actually found this clip from week 4 and I have to save this here for myself because it was pretty epic. I won a 1v5 situation / clutch because the enemies kind of threw. It's a good reminder to never give up no matter what the situation looks like. Okay, bye.
Spike down A. Last player standing.
I like wall flash and one molly's down too. Or voice, I mean, Jesus.
Enemy remaining. 4 and 30 seconds left.
Is ready.
That was so crazy.
Bro, no
What the
way.
fuck?